Welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're moving now into our first segment for the morning. And this one is actually one of those conversations that is actually hitting the country by storm. What is it? We'll be discussing with BSCAP. We'll be tackling actually the issue of copyright. Now, how did we come around to this conversation? Because of the Ding Ding Walla song. All right. So, but you know, it actually is falling to place where which I feel the right way, because Belizeans need to know how to protect their product. All right. So in to talk to us about it, we've got Heather Cunningham. She's the interim chairwoman and entertainment attorney for BSCAP, and also Melissa Zuniga, who is the general manager for BSCAP. Guys, good morning and welcome.
Morning.
Hey, good morning.
All right, so nice to see both of you. So do we start by singing the song? What do we do? You know, it's a situation that actually resonated because of how close we are with this song, how much we love this song, and the person who actually wrote this song, the Queen of Brockdown in Belize. May she rest in peace, Leela Vernon. Tell us about this song and the particulars, and I'll go with Heather. Tell us about the particulars of this song and how it got started.
Well, the particulars of the song is still under investigation, to be honest. We did some due diligence, and we were not able to see or find the chain of title from the start. And that's the first process, being able to identify the original authors. We know that Leela did a version, and there's several other versions of the song, some which were in existence prior to Leela's version. So until we know who actually authored the song, it's hard to really identify the true owner, basically, of the composition. And as far as the copyright is concerned, the copyright follows the owner. And since we don't know for certain who the original authors are, that's where things stand. Now, Leela definitely has a version, and her version is protected to the extent that it's the arrangement was different from the original. I haven't heard the original, so I can't speak to whether it's similar, different, or not.
Yeah. This brings into focus a larger issue here, and I think it has opened up the conversation about intellectual property and copyright. This scenario, I think, with the Ding Ding Walla song, which sounds weird to say out loud without singing, is one where we only know, or the majority of people have been exposed to Belizean artists singing the song. So the natural assumption is that it is ours. Explain to us why this is not such a clear-cut scenario.
Well, because if there were pre-existing versions of the song, it's not any one person. It starts with, again, it's like with buying a house. When you purchase a house, you usually have to, in order for you to own it, you have to have clear title, meaning you know exactly who you got it from and from the time it was created or built. And that's the same process with music. There's a chain of title. So when you create, and this is what artists, creators are encouraged to do, to register with deposit in a depository there in Belize, or register with the Copyright Office in the US. Or for music specifically, the artist can register with BSCAP. And when you register with BSCAP, your works are documented, the authors are documented, and it's in an international database. So it's a record of your ownership in the song. So there won't be a question as to, well, who's the original author, or when was the song created? All of those questions will have been documented, and it would be easier to answer in a situation when someone comes out with a similar work to say, oh, well, this work was done first, so this is the original author. And then the question can be answered as to whether it's a public domain work, because public domain, according to the law, goes according to when the work was created, and if the author is unknown, because it's the life plus 50 years in Belize. So once the author passes, there's 50 years for copyright protection, and then it falls into public domain. And if the author is unknown, which is the case right now, then it's 50 years from the date of the initial publication of the work. Now the question is, when was the work first released? We don't know. That research has to be done before we can speak on that.
Yeah.
So
I think we have Melissa on the line too. Melissa, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
We had a power outage. I'm sorry.
Uh-oh.
Oh, man.
But Melissa, this really brings into focus, I think, I think it's surprising for people to know that we don't know the origins of the song, and I know it ties back to folklore. Tell us the perspective. BSCAP put out the release, and we appreciate it, because where I think tensions were already high and people were agitated, you kind of brought in just the facts of the situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
We wanted to use it as a moment where we could share some information about the importance of copyright, Intellectual Property Act, and laws, and in this specific example, public domain, and what that is, and how this specific song or why this specific song is considered public domain work, and why there was no infringement in the use of the song by Kimberly Flores. So we just wanted to clarify the facts and just bring awareness to the general public. We understand the
Nobody wants
national pride.
I was about to say, nobody's happy with BSCAP saying, yes, it's okay for her to use it.
Yes, we understand national pride as it relates to, Miss Leela Vernon's version, but we just wanted to share, facts as it relates to this new release, and quell some of the false information that is going out there about the work.
Mel, like I mentioned earlier as we started, I think this situation is actually an eye-opening one for Belizeans, so they're able to protect their product of music. What was the feeling like from the team at BSCAP when you heard about it? And I could just imagine we scrambled. What happened there?
Yeah, well, our initial reaction was trying to ensure that no infringement occurred. So that was the first thing, and that's why we did the preliminary research. We found a version from 1975 that was done by the web. And so we just, we're trying to still, like as Heather mentioned, ascertain who the original author was. But it is clear that it is a public domain work. And so that was one of the things that we were able to, so far confirm.
How do you determine if it's a public domain work? How do you find that out?
It is a public domain work if the copyright has expired, if the work has no clear owner that has been established, and if the original owner of the work created it and stated that they wanted the work to be public domain, because you can create a work in 2021 and you can indicate that you want this work to be public domain. And so that would have no copyright and anyone would be able to use that work without infringement. So those are some of the basic facts that we have identified thus far.
So, what does this mean moving forward? Now that we have identified in this particular scenario that the origins of Ding Ding Walla are unknown, are we now looking into other well-known songs that perhaps go back to folklore that we need to investigate and prevent this from happening?
Well, I think one of the things that we are trying to do is to increase public knowledge about copyright. Now that this incident or this matter has occurred, we also want persons to be aware of it because there are also a lot of Garifuna songs that
Yeah.
are considered traditional songs, and they're used by different artists
Yeah.
here in Belize, in Guatemala, Honduras, etc. So we just want to increase that awareness um, about copyright, about how one can protect their work. Um, and we also want to have the conversation. As a country, there are certain things that we still need to put in place. Our Copyright Act was last updated in 2000. Since then, we have signed 5 additional treaties that are not incorporated into that Copyright Act. So we want to ensure that from a country level, if infringement occurs, that there is protection. We also want to ensure that for the persons that publicly perform music, we want for them to pay and acknowledge that these works were created by other persons, not necessarily just the singer of the song, but there are people behind the scenes who have contributed to the work, and we want those persons to be able to be compensated for their contribution to those works. So it's just, a perfect opportunity to have a discussion and to, ask the hard questions as it relates to where we are as a country in relation to copyright, intellectual property.
What would you say in terms of the entire body of original Belizean songs that we know of? How much of it is protected?
That is hard to say. Again, it goes back to the origin. Some of what we consider Belizean folklore, the traditional songs, sometimes it is not. I have heard some songs in Jamaica and Barbados that I thought were Belizean.
Like which ones? Before we have to get blindsided again.
I don't recall at this point.
I know a few.
Yeah, but there are a few of them that are common in the Caribbean. Yes. So I could always send you that information.
Yes.
I think it's great great information to have. There is a song from Lord Rayburn that is called King Liar, and it's a favorite of mine. I love the lyrics, but it was actually done way before that, and yes, it was actually done way before that. I don't remember the artist, but out of Trinidad, and that's a great song. I actually thought it was here. One day I went up to say, you know what, I want to hear this song, so I looked it up, and I couldn't find the Lord Rayburn version. I actually found the original, but nonetheless. How do we, if I should make a song right now, which Marlene nearly challenged me this morning, but if I should make a song right now, what are my steps to get it copyrighted?
Okay, Heather?
Well, the steps, it's twofold, well, threefold. As I stated earlier, one, you can do the depository, and I recommend all three, actually. Do the depository there in Belize. I think there's a depository fee, which is you deposit a copy of your recording. The other is register with BSCAP if you're a songwriter of music or lyrics or melody, to register so that you can have a record of your ownership interests, and also so that you can collect royalties both locally and internationally, and also register with the U.S. Copyright Office, because we found that a lot of the artist's works, well, not a lot, there's been a few instances of some of the artists whose works have been infringed upon here in the States. And one of the requirements for suing for infringement in the courts here is you have to have a copyright registration before filing. And there's a certain time limit that you have in order to do everything. So if you start out with making sure you're protected in the event that your music is infringed upon, you can preserve your rights and be able to get statutory damages.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I think one of the things, though, as you rightly pointed out, John, I think it's that it's just a different era, where artists, let's say 30 years ago, didn't have to think of copyright infringement. Maybe the newer artists are protecting themselves, but we still have kind of that purgatory of music we know and love that may or may not be ours. How do you address music that has been created in the past, and whether somebody wants to recreate it today?
I think those we call those the classic catalogs or classic works, and those artists especially need to register their works. If they haven't before, do so now, because a lot of people, the newer, younger artists, that's what they look for to get inspiration. Mm-hmm. And anytime you take from an original work, you have to give credit and give permission. So even if it's just, I don't know, 2 seconds of a work, if it's an identifiable piece of someone else's work, you have to get permission. And if you don't, that's infringement. So a lot of the classic catalogs are being used for newer music. So it's important for the older artists as well as the younger artists to register their works and make sure that there's a paper trail. All the contributors of the works is well documented, so that in the event any piece of the work is used by someone else at a later point, be able to preserve your rights and enforce your rights. Actually, is the better term.
And what if that artist is no longer alive? Let's look at somebody like Mr. Peters. And I'm just using that as an example, but it could be any artist that has passed. Can the family do it? I mean, what are steps to take?
Right. The family, usually it falls to the estate.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that a lot of artists aren't aware of. They don't feel that. And we do have instances in our membership where some of the writers have passed, but no estates were open because they passed without what they call any property. They didn't have real property, but they have intangible property, which is the copyrights in their works, because their songs are still generating royalties worldwide, and especially because of the digital age. And so their estates would have to be open, and those works would fall into the estates, and their personal reps would be the ones who would pursue any legal claims with respect to the music. And then once those legal claims are realized or satisfied, then the estate would close and it would fall to their beneficiaries. Mm-hmm. So it's just like with any other property. When someone dies that passes, it's the same process. And it can also be willed to their beneficiaries just the same. Put in a will and it passes. It can be held in a trust. I mean, there's so many different ways to deal with it, but it's just like real property, it's just intangible.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, is it expensive to copyright my product?
Expensive is relative. There are copyright fees, definitely, but it's worth it, and it's less expensive to copyright unpublished work, because then you can, if you have like 20 songs, it's just one fee, all 20 songs are covered. Once the song is published, it's more expensive. I can't recall off the top of my head for the register filing fee now. Yeah, I can't recall, but it's more expensive once you publish. So your best bet is to do the registration when the songs go prior to publication.
Melissa, following the rollout of this situation this weekend, have you or have BSCAP been hearing from Belizean artists in respect to trying to get their music copyrighted?
Yeah, we have been hearing, we participated in the Music Week activities, so we had a forum, and we have been hearing there are artists who opt to register or apply for the foreign CMOs, so BMI and ASCAP, because they believe that they're going to collect more royalties that way. And that's their personal choice. But there are steps that many artists are beginning to take. Questions are being asked in terms of how they can go about doing it. And we have always been here to advise and to show them, how they can begin to protect their work before it's even released.
If an artist would hear their copyrighted song being played elsewhere, and I think this happened several times. I know my brother Super G had done his work. What do I need to do to get my royalties? What are my steps? How do I get that?
Well, one of the things you have to do is, that's kind of, there's several different ways to go about it. But one of the ways, because I have worked with Super G and some of his claims for infringement, and I always advise to reach out to an attorney because it's a lot of due diligence that you might not be able to do on your own unless you have someone in management on your team who can handle it. So you basically have to reach out to the ones who are infringing. And that's after you've made sure that your works have been registered with the Copyright Office that's here in the States. Because that's the only way that's the first thing. If you don't have a registration, nobody's really going to take your call. Now you're an attorney, and you certainly aren't going to get into court. But you have to have the copyright registration, and thereafter it's reaching out to the infringers and trying to negotiate. And it just depends on the circumstances. If it's a big song, the big artist, you want to go after where the deep pockets are. If it's not so much, then you want to negotiate on the lower level. So it really depends on the infringing use and the parties involved. But you definitely have to reach out. I would advise to reach out to an attorney to represent your interests. And you have to be prepared to pay some money because it's not cheap at all.
Yeah. And it'll also be very expensive to fight it as well, if you don't have the type of protection you need.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's why sometimes it's not necessarily, a lot of people move based on emotions. It's their song, and we get it. It's your song, you've worked hard, and then someone steals it from you. But that's not the only reason to proceed, because it can be quite expensive to go full length of a copyright infringement action.
All right. Well, Melissa, tell us a bit about the services that BSCAP offers, because it's not just musicians or songwriters that you help.
Yes, well, our members are performers. So anybody who performs, whether it's playing an instrument or vocals. We have authors, and it is the writers of the lyrics or the persons that create the melody. We have producers. We have publishers. The publishers are those persons that distribute the works after they've been created. So those are the categories of membership that we have, and a person can fall under one or more, because in Belize, you know that we tend to do everything. So we have members that are, they produce their own works, they create the melodies, they write the lyrics, they they publish their works, and so those are membership categories. Mm-hmm. We also ensure that music that is publicly performed is licensed. So any restaurant, bar, concert that publicly play music without obtaining a license is in infringement of the Copyright Act. That includes radio stations, TV stations. If you do not have a license for the public performance of music, you are in infringement. That's just it at the basic level. So we reach out to music users to send them information and for them to begin to be licensed so that they're not in infringement and so that the royalties that are generated can go back to the creators of the musical works.
All right.
All right. Well, you guys cleared that up for us. Heather Cunningham and Melissa Zuniga, we'd like to thank you so very much for joining us this morning to break down what we can do and how we can do to get our product, our music, and the other things that we do copyrighted. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
All right, so there we go. We're about to take a break. When we come back, we'll be chit-chatting with a pediatrician neurologist. We'll be discussing the effects of screen time on your children's brain. So we'll talk about that